right, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Amir's Anecdotes. Today I have with me Terry Whalin, who's calling in from Orange County, California. Terry, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, Amir, I'm in the publishing business. I've been there a long time. I've written more than 60 books for traditional publishers.
Wow.
Some of those books have sold over 100,000 copies. Um, I've been also on the other side of the desk as a acquisitions editor. I currently work for Morgan James Publishing. I'm starting my 13th year with them. They're a New York publishing house. We publish around 180, 200 books a year. Been in business over 20 years. This is the third publisher that I'm working for in the
Wow.
acquisitions area. So I've worked with hundreds of authors over the years on their books, and I've also written for more than 50 magazines. So I'm very much entrenched in the publishing
Wow.
area of the
So you
market.
are you are a master of the English language, I would say.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm still learning, but I
Yeah,
definitely have published a lot of stuff over the
that's
years.
great. So how'd you get into this?
I actually got into it in high school. My high school English teacher noticed something in my writing, encouraged me to join the high school newspaper. I became the editor of my high school newspaper, and then I went to Indiana University, one of the top 10 journalism schools in the country, and studied journalism is what I did back
Wow.
then.
Wow, that's great. And you know what's really cool about that is that teacher in high school that kind of like saw something in you, you know?
He did. Pretty remarkable, actually, looking back. And I've
Yeah.
tried to go back to him and express my appreciation, but sadly, I didn't do it soon enough. Amir, he's no longer living. So yeah.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, you know, I what would be cool is if you were able to maybe you like send a letter to his house or something. Maybe his kids will get it or his wife or something. I did do that. You know, my father died when I was in high school, and then I think 2 years ago, you know, I've been out of high school for a long time. I wrote a letter to one of the teachers I had in high school who I found out I couldn't afford to go on a field trip after my father had died, and the teacher paid for it out of his own pocket. And so I sent him a letter just to say, like, you know, when I was in that time, like getting away, going on that trip was really meaningful. And I sent him that letter.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So you were in high school. You were doing the editor of the newspaper. You go to Indiana University. You're in journalism. So you've kind of been in this uh, industry basically your whole career. And how old are you now?
Uh, I'm going to be I'm 71, and
Wow.
I haven't been in my whole career. I actually out of college I made a my journalism colleagues thought I was a little nuts, but so instead of going into becoming a newspaper reporter, I actually joined a group called Wycliffe Bible Translators, and I
Uh,
worked with them for 17 years, 10 years in linguistics. So I
oh
have
wow.
actually have a New Testament on my shelf here from the Southwest Cachiquel language in Guatemala that I was involved in. So not the
Wow.
whole time. I haven't been the whole time in publishing, but a lot of it, I guess, is what I'd say.
Wow. That okay. So you spent 20 years of or 17 years of your career working on the linguistics and the translations, and then you went back into publishing. Is that what happened?
Yeah, then I went back into publishing. I started writing for magazines, and I ultimately became the editorial director at our mission. And then I was actually hired to the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association actually hired me to be the associate editor of Decision Magazine. Back when the office was in Minneapolis, we were doing 1.8 million copies of the magazine every month, and
Wow.
so I worked at that for a couple of years, and then I've been doing freelance type of work for a long time.
Wow. What a story. That's really incredible. And I gotta say, you're spry for 71.
Well, I'm very grateful that I have a lot of energy. I'm still working full time and have no retirement plans, Amir. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
good for you. That's wonderful. So, as you think back on kind of that journey through your life, right? You're in high school, you're writing in the newspaper, to then translation work, to then the magazine, to now the publishing freelance. I mean, what an arc! And as you think back on that story, what would you identify as the most stressful financial position you've been
Oh well, there have been a number of times, not just
in?
once that has
Sure.
actually happened. But um, one of the times that I can really think of here to talk to you about is in 2007. Mark Victor Hansen, the co-author on Chicken Soup for the Soul, was
Hmm.
having this event out in Los Angeles called Mega Book Marketing University. And I was running a little litter agency in Scottsdale, Arizona. And so he invited me to come out to this event. And so I went and I took pitches from people throughout this event, but I also sat there with all 400 people that were taking this conference. Now, at that point in my life, I'd written about 50 books for traditional publishers. So
Oh, wow.
publishers were making great books. They were putting them in the bookstore, uh, all that kind of thing. I was getting advances for them. But when you're in publishing, once a year, maybe quarterly, the publisher will send you a financial statement about how your book is doing financially.
Mm,
When I was getting these statements, all of mine were in the minus category. I wasn't making any money. I couldn't figure out what in the world. I must have been doing something wrong, but I couldn't figure out what I was doing that was really the error there. So as I sat there and listened to all these people, um, one of the speakers was Jack Canfield, the other co-author on Chicken Soup for the Soul. And Jack has this book that he wrote called The Success Principles, about what does it take to really be successful. And the very first success principle says that I will take 100% responsibility for my own success.
mm,
Now, none of us want to take 100% responsibility. We want somebody else to do it for
sure.
us. And what my wake up moment was, I realized how little I was actually doing to be telling people about my books. Sure,
Mm,
I had a terrywhalin.com website, but I was doing almost nothing else to be telling people about my book. So
mm,
I decided during this event that I was going to take 100% responsibility for my own success. So I started blogging, and blogging was new back then, and I've continued blogging through the years. My blog actually has over 1,700 entries in it, and about a year ago, I found this article that listed the top 27 content producers out there. Now they say there's over 600 million blogs that are out there, but
sure.
they listed me as one of the top 27 content producers, along with
Wow.
Seth Godin and Ryan Holiday and Jeff Goins, people like that, names you'd recognize, and they had my name there. And it's not that I've done anything magical at all, Amir. I've just
Sure.
been writing these articles, week after week, persistently. So that's one of the stories that I could give people that are, in crisis, how, like financial crisis. How in the world do you get yourself out? Well, one of the ways is just by taking action and doing things consistently. I mean, these Chicken Soup for the Soul authors I mentioned, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, people forget that they were rejected over 160 times,
Wow.
that before they finally found somebody in Florida to publish that first Chicken Soup for the Soul book. Well, they told their publisher they were going to sell 1 million books during the first year. And their publisher laughed at them. They'd never sold 1 million copies of anything. They thought that was
Yeah.
ridiculous. It took them a year and a half to sell their first 1 million books.
Wow.
And the way they did it is they practiced what they call the rule of five. They got up every day and did 5 things to be telling people about their book. They did a podcast, a radio show, a magazine article, a newspaper article, a live event. There are dozens of things you can do, but they did it over and over and consistently, and that's really what made the difference for them.
Wow. So for you, you're at this conference, and you're realizing, that you hadn't really been taking accountability for the success. You're getting these reports saying, "Hey, your book's not making any money," and just like throwing your hands in the air, like, "Oh, whose fault is that?" And meanwhile, you're the author of the book. You got to go on Oprah and tell her to, read it or something. And you're getting these negative financial statements. So does that mean that you then owe back the publishing company that money?
Well, you would think so, but I've never had a publisher ask for money back. Thankfully,
Okay.
they
Okay.
just
Good.
take it off as a tax write off. I think is what happened.
Okay.
But two of the proposals that I wrote did get seven-figure advances. So I mean, I
Oh
had a
wow.
lot of money pending out there that I was trying to sell books and make some more money, and it just was not happening for me. And this is true for a lot of authors. I mean, they think that their book is going to make a lot of money whether they do anything or not. It's almost like they fall into that that Kevin Costner movie, The Field of Dreams. If they build
Hmm.
it, they will come. If I
Right.
write this book, it'll sell. I'll make a lot of money,
Yeah.
whether that's true or not. That's what the myth that they fall into, really.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. People have to know about the book to want to read it.
It's true.
It doesn't matter how good the book is. You have to know that it exists. So so how did you then pay your bills if your book's not making any money?
Well, I was being a literary agent, so I was doing that, and I was paying my bills because actually I had some money that I inherited that
Mm,
we were living off of. But actually, my wife and I wasn't making money back then.
yeah.
So I actually blew through all that money that we inherited. Actually, I had to sell our house in Arizona at a lost $100,000 on that. You
Oof.
can't. We we really don't know how to do real estate very well, Amir. To be honest, we know how to
Sure.
we know how to buy high and sell low, which is not what
Yeah.
you're supposed to do. Not what you're
Right.
supposed to do. But we dug ourselves out of that and moved to basically moved out of Arizona back to Colorado where we came from originally, and ultimately, I was able to make freelance money in different ways and turn that whole situation around.
Yeah. So I want to dive deeper into that. So you're at this conference. You're realizing your books aren't making any money. The only way you're able to pay your bills is by a happenstance inheritance. And how much was the inheritance roughly?
Oh, I think it was probably in the $800,000
Okay.
area,
So yeah,
but
yeah. Okay. So that's good. That's helpful. But then that's all the money you have. So you're
that's all
spending
the
it
money
to.
I had, and we
That's how you.
I didn't have a job. I didn't have a full-time job. I only had this
Yeah.
freelance, independent income that I was doing, and it's really hard to make a living as a literary agent. I mean, hardly anybody
Yeah.
talks about that, but they make a percentage of the deals that they sell, and you have to be closing a lot of deals, maybe
Yeah.
100 a
Right.
year, in order to be able to make a real living at that kind of thing.
Yeah. So you're making in freelance income. It sounds like what 20,000 a year maybe.
Yeah, maybe 20, 25,000 a year. It wasn't
Yeah.
doing well. I basically living off the inheritance that we had. So
Yeah. And then over how many years did you kind of effectively run that inheritance down?
I would say it was over about maybe 5 years.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
So
that tracks. You're in Orange County, California. It's a high cost of living area. You're only making 20, 25 grand. So, between taxes and your house and your groceries and all whatever have you,
yeah, this was in Scottsdale, Arizona. We're living in
Oh,
in,
okay.
in North Scottsdale, Arizona. So we were in a gated community, and
Yeah.
all that stuff just sucks the money out whether you
Yeah.
whether you think about it or not. So I basically have learned the hard lesson here that many professional athletes
Hmm. Yeah.
learn. They get
Yeah.
this huge paycheck and they think it's endless, and so they spend it, and then suddenly they're broken bankrupt,
Yeah.
wondering
And,
how in the
and
world they go next.
And you know what? I think this is also affecting a lot of Americans in a different way in that freelance space because more and more companies they're just hiring freelancers instead of bona fide employees. They don't really have pensions anymore. There's not really that long term loyalty, And so it's not like, oh, okay, this is consistent. It's you have to hustle for each deal. And this happened to a friend of mine who's like a life insurance agent. You have to hustle for every sale. And you're almost like sucked into that freelance culture where you're like, okay, I'm not going to do anything about it because it's going to hit eventually, right? Eventually, it's gonna be fine. And along the way, you're slowly dwindling the
Yep.
inheritance, and then if it's not there anymore, then you're well, it never hit. It never had the $700,000 commission check, you
That's
know.
right. That's right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of how you're thought to think in a freelance industry. You're just like keep trucking along. I know you're making 20 grand, but you'll eventually make $1 million a year in commissions.
Yeah, I just have to hit on the right idea, the right
Yeah,
connection, the right person. And that may happen or it
sure.
may not. So ultimately, there in Arizona, I actually started to work for a publisher and started to make some money and all that. But then uh, this publisher looked like they were the real person; they were really doing the work, but it turned out they were a scam publisher. They
Oh,
really weren't doing the work. So I've actually taken
jeez.
taken that name off of my background. It's still hanging around out there a little bit, but the CEO of that company, they one of my authors thinks that he ran away with like $300,000 from the authors that were there,
Jeez.
and I mean it was a terrible situation, and but that's what can happen in the publishing business if you don't really
Yeah.
carefully check out who you're working with out
Yeah.
there at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah. So, so you burn through the inheritance, you're doing the freelance, and then eventually the buck stops, right? So you said you have to sell your house and move back to Colorado. Did you have to declare bankruptcy or no? You
No,
were
I never
able to.
never declared bankruptcy in that process, but I got pretty low
Yeah.
in my income. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so at that lowest point before you have that pivot and that wake up, inheritance is down to zero, completely dwindled.
Yep, completely dwindled. Yeah,
Oof. Retirement accounts zero.
didn't have any retirement accounts anymore. I blew through all that too. Yeah,
Wow. Checking account zero or maybe 5 grand.
I had a little bit in there, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was tough.
Jeez. So, and then what were you thinking to yourself in that moment? Like, I'm going to give up. I'm going to get do a different job, or did that wake up moment kind of cause that change for you?
Yeah, I think the wake up moment caused the change, and but I was trying all kinds of things. I was gonna work at a regular 9 to 5. I applied to some places. I was applying to publishing jobs, but what I didn't really realize until somebody actually told me this is I mean, I was aging out of actually being able to actually get an active job. I mean, nobody.
Yeah.
One of my friends finally told me, he said, "Terry, nobody's going to hire you because you're 10 years away from being 65,
Hmm.
and uh, you don't have enough runway in your life in order for some company to take you on. Sure, you've got a great resume, but that doesn't mean they're going to hire you." And it
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
oh, really? you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you're staring down at really a bad situation. And now, did you reach out to anyone for help? Did you talk to your friends and family about how you had no money and you had no income? Or did you
I
kind of
did. I
isolate?
did. I was telling my family, and I got a little help from my parents at that point,
Hmm.
but uh, I was I was trying to figure out what the next step. My wife and I were trying to figure out what the next step
Yeah.
should be and what I should do.
Yeah. So, putting my financial advisor hat on, if we had met back then, uh, there's so many things that I would tell you. And if someone's listening to this and in a similar situation, it's you really do need to build out that financial plan and map that out. And what I would have told you, when you'd gotten the inheritance is you're spending more than your income, right? So you are
Yeah.
running down this inheritance, which is your prerogative. It's your inheritance. But let's put a line in the sand and say at this point I'm going to stop and make a pivot with my career. Whether that's when you went from 800,000 to 600,000, you blew through a quarter of it, and making a decision at that point or halfway through it instead of waiting for it to be completely gone, then you lose your options, right? Or maybe change the way that the inheritance is invested, or restructuring the income, or making your freelance more of a side gig and trying to get a 9 to 5 when you were in your 40s.
Yeah, hindsight's really, really great,
Yeah, of
or
course.
bad in this area because,
Yeah,
my wife and I talk about this a lot. It's like, why did we stay in Arizona for 8 years when
yeah,
we could have sold our place at a profit before the real estate market tanked in
yeah,
Arizona and moved back to Colorado and tried over there with less
yeah,
expenses and all that. But we didn't make smart financial decisions looking back. So
yeah,
I'm trying to learn those lessons today so that I'm wise about what I do and the way I'm treating my money. That it's not gonna last forever,
yeah,
particularly if I'm not monitoring it and taking good care of it. So
yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because I feel like there's this thing about money that people do where they don't want to talk to other people about it. Whereas, if my toilet leaks, I'm going to call the plumber right away. I can learn and I can monitor and I can do all these things, and I have no interest in doing that. And I'm I remember when I had my first car, I was ostracized by my male peers because I was like, I'm going to go to the mechanic and get an oil change. They're like, you don't know how to change the oil in your car? I'm like, yeah, I do. I took shop class and I know how to do it, but I don't want to because what if I screw it up? And for whatever reason, finance is the one area where people don't take that same lens and that same position. It's very much like, I need to learn, I need to be wise, I need to monitor, I need to learn about money. Why? How? It's a whole field of study in and of itself
it is.
that you didn't entertain in high school or in college or in university or over the past 50 years. And then now it's, I got to be better. You don't have to be better. You actually just need to involve the community. And we say, as a function of like, raising children, it takes a village. It actually takes a village in all aspects of life, right? Like we need tradesmen, we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need contractors, we need financial advisors and accountants, and all of that is part of your community and your tribe and your village to help you lead a successful life. And it's that isolationist, I need to make the decision and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to sell my home, that will always going to lead people to making the suboptimal decision.
No, I think that's exactly right. We need all the help and guidance that we can get from other people. That's for sure. Rather than trying to figure it out ourselves.
Yeah. So if someone's listening to this and they're in a freelance industry and maybe they're living off of an inheritance and you're resonating with Terry's story, make a plan, right? And I know that you want to have that pride about it, and but don't rely on yourself to make the plan. Hire someone to help you make that plan. That's what a financial plan is by definition. It doesn't mean giving away your money to have someone else invest it. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means have a plan, write it down, have a plan of action that is objective instead of emotional. And it could be something as simple as, we're going to give this a go until the inheritance goes down to half of what it was. And then that's when I'm going to make a change with my career. Um, so, Terry, what did you ultimately do? That, obviously you didn't hire me back then, but you're alive and you're here and you're successful and you have your blogs and your publishing and your podcasts, right? So what did you do? Which obviously wasn't my advice because you didn't know me back then.
Right.
What did you do to now be in a better financial position today?
Yeah, to be in a better financial position, I ultimately, moved to a different place of the country where our expenses were less. Kept looking for work, and ultimately that came, and those writing projects came, and so I was able to turn around what I was doing financially just by continuing to knock on doors for opportunities, and those opportunities happened, I guess is what
Good,
I'd say.
good. And so now you have some money, more than you did, and you have
Right.
income.
I
would
did.
you care to share, rough numbers of what you have now? What have you built?
Oh, at this point, both my parents have passed, and we sold my sister and I sold their house. They had a farm in Kentucky, and so
Hmm.
uh, at this point, I actually have invested. It's actually over $1 million actually, as
Wow.
I look at
Good
it,
for you.
and we're renters here in Southern California. I have no plans to buy property or anything here, but
Sure.
we love where we live, and it's a good setup for us. And I'm still working full time,
Sure.
Amir. So I think, as long as we're careful and wise about our expenses and what we're doing, it's gonna be fine for us.
That's great. Good. So you look, if Terry can do it, you can do it, dear listener. Uh, so Terry, thank you for sharing that with us. Is If somebody wants to learn more about you or reach out to you or learn more about your publishing or your books or if they're an author, I mean, how should they reach out to you and what are you doing now?
Yeah, I one of the best ways. I even have my personal email address in my X Twitter file, which is just under my name, Terry Whalin. They can search for me and reach out to me that way. I'm still actively acquiring books at Morgan James. I mean, like I say, we publish about 200 books a year, and uh, I'm always looking for the right author and the right book for us to publish. Yeah, I'm happy to help people.
That's great. Wonderful. Anything else that you want to say to the listeners before we close it out today?
Yeah, the book that I wrote is called 10 Publishing Myths, because what I find is that many authors have unrealistic expectations about what's going to happen with their book. Like
Sure.
the very first expectation that people have is that I will make a lot of money with my book, and we've talked about how that doesn't work very well.
Sure.
So I want people to get this book because it's practical and has the stories combined with practical actions that every author can take. And so you can get this book directly from me. If you go to publishingoffer.com, you get the book for only $10. That includes the shipping, along with
Oh,
over $200 worth of bonuses here. So I really try to make it easy for people to get this book and then use the information as something that can really help them with their writing and their dreams of what they want to do.
that's awesome. Thanks, Terry. That's great. So let's chat offline because I do want to try to publish something one day. That's one of my lists of things to talk about. So let's talk about that offline. But everyone else, thank you for listening and tune in for the next episode.